Okay, while everybody's eating, I thought I'd get us started, at least the SBE portion of it. I'm Jim Kaufman, Chairman of Chapter 42. So just opening up the meeting with old business. The minutes were submitted. Any changes to last meeting's minutes? Hearing none. Other old business, we had a nomination for a new chairman for the chapter. I heard no opposition at the time, and there have been no subsequent input from anyone. So the chairman, who we're putting forth to you today, the candidate, is Jeff Juniette. And I would like members to go ahead and vote how many ayes we have. Aye. Any nays? Oh, he scratched his ear right when I was at, I thought, you had me going there, brother. No, so Jeff is going to take over the chairmanship, unopposed. And I'll drop back to vice chairman if that's okay with you, Jeff. And I think you can put it into new business right now. Ladies and gentlemen, Jeff Juniette, your new chairman.
That was a quick inauguration. Thanks everybody for coming out. Really appreciate it. Thanks to everybody at Professional Wireless and Jim Van Winkle for sending the word out. I see a whole lot of faces I don't recognize, so it's a really good turnout. And the ones I do, thanks for being here also. And also want to say a quick thanks to Dave Cyrack for helping us out, WFTV's own Dave Cyrack, for helping us out getting the stream going on this. For anybody who can't make it, because, well, we got this little bug thing going around, and it's appears to be going fast. So anybody watching online, we appreciate it, and we will post a video clip of this if there's anybody else that wants to see it that couldn't make it. So don't really have anything in the way of new business other than thanking everybody for being here. Hope you get something to eat. We do have a sign-in sheet here. Scott has that. We'll get that passing around. You do not have to be an SBE member to sign that. We just ask that you sign it so we know you were here. Scott would like a copy of that because he's going to go brag that we did this pretty big here in Orlando. So anyway, I'll just jump right into what we've got going on this afternoon. And Scott Hewitt? Yes. Hewitt. I've been talking to two Scotts all week, and I keep getting them mixed up. So I'm surprised you didn't get any of the wrong emails. Anyway, Scott Hewitt from T-Mobile is here to talk to us about dealing with wireless microphones in this new repacked world of ours. And Orlando went through the repack end of January. And so now, hopefully most, if not all the changes on that end are done. Now we have to kind of clean up. And that's what we're going to talk about. Thank you. Scott,
Little background on me. I was in the broadcasting business 20 years ago. I ran a facility in New Hampshire that made broadcast antennas and then wireless antennas called Allen Dick and Company. We didn't sell a lot of antennas. Dielectric up in Maine got the majority of it, but we did wind up selling an awful lot of wireless antennas. We had a cross-polar design, and it was during the PCS build-outs, the 1900s. And so that's when I really went from working in the broadcast industry to working in the wireless industry. And there's a fellow at T-Mobile who's our CTO, Neville Ray, who's sort of considered the arch champion of the spectrum chess that we play in wireless when we build networks. And Neville's a Brit who also worked for Allen Dick, and I met him when he was in Dubai, and the British do business all over the world, so that we had a meeting there, and he went on to move over here and build out some networks for Pac Bell, and then is running engineering for T-Mobile. And so we had a bit of an auction a couple years ago, and by the way, this is, if I go too fast or over anything that you've always wondered about, please ask me about wireless broadcasting. If I don't know, I'll throw it to the crowd, but I'll try to fill in anything you're curious about. So the federal government auctioned off the UHF band. We call it Band 71. And we wound up, T-Mobile wound up, $20 billion were spent, and we spent $8. And for $8 billion, which was 40% of it, AT&T and Verizon didn't show up. They had so much low band, what we call beachfront property, to build of their networks that kind of came when they were all baby bells. We built out a network in 1900 and in AWS 2100, and we had a little bit of 700. But boy, I'll tell you, when we got a chance to get the 800 band, which was really the gold, we went big, and the other guys didn't show up. AT&T already had the FirstNet spectrum. They're building out the national responder network. And Verizon just didn't participate. Ergen's Dish was second. Comcast was third. AT&T spent very little, and then there was some speculators in the business. But low-band spectrum at 800, the physics of it is it travels further, it penetrates buildings better, it's more cost-effective across densely areas, less densely covered areas. T-Mobile has, because we build out networks with 1900, we did very well in the cities. Matter of fact, AT&T almost acquired us years ago, and when that broke up, we wound up getting a lot of their 700 megahertz in New York City. So that put us in business in a lot of places, but this really, for us, was a game changer because it's going to be the foundation of what we use for 5G. So we wound up with, on an average of you'll see the magenta color, the 40 megahertz. So roughly, it's 5 up and 5 down. So 4 blocks in almost everywhere. And if you look at Florida, we've got areas with 4 blocks, and then on the East Coast, 3 blocks up and down. And we are rapidly building this out. We're having these meetings nationwide because of what this means to the wireless mic community. And people like Henry Cohen in New York, who introduced us to James Staffo and introduced us to all my friends here from PWS, have been very helpful in getting us in front of a lot of the vertical markets, theaters. Gosh, Henry took us to Radio City Music Hall at the very beginning. We met with all the people, and all the pros moved out of these bands very quickly. Part of the reason why I'm so pleased to have all you here is on Friday, there's a whole bunch of high power stations that are going to turn on, repack to new stations, and we're going to begin turning on our 600 megahertz here in the Orlando area and across Florida. And we're hoping that those of you will go back to your communities. We know that Disney and Universal have planned ahead for this, the pros, through people like PWS, but schools, churches, small houses of worship, lots of microphones who they're sitting, these are the interference cases. So we show wireless microphone concerns. There's our concerns and wireless microphone concerns. The only one that really matters on this page is case 3. That's when we turn on a 600 megahertz base station at 20 watts and it hits that wireless microphone receiver. And it just won't work. So we're encouraging everybody to, if they haven't already, to migrate out of it. The other cases I'll just go over briefly. The case 4, which is our user interface, basically your cell phone, that amount of interference to the receiver that's nothing compared to the other concern coming from the tower. And the interference into us, case 1, which is a wireless microphone on our base station, that's not going to happen. And case 2, which is the wireless microphone on a handset, possibly, but again, it's getting possibly on the uplink. We have uplink and downlink. On the uplink, which is our much weaker signal, that could interfere, but we're not terribly worried about it. We're not here because we're worried about us. We're here because we know if lots of communities have their wireless microphones not working anymore, that the last thing they're going to do is go out and get T-Mobile 5G phones when they come out at the end of the year. So it's a public service thing, but we all do public service, to all, in the end, hope that you'll go for Magenta phones when these are done too. So so eat up with the barbecue, because T-Mobile is, if you get the word out, we'll all be happy. I bring up this slide. So T-Mobile has the B, C, D, and E blocks. And our blocks and your UHF TV channels are 1 megahertz offset. Ours are 5 and yours are 6. So let's just look at the C block, for example. The C block is sitting right over channel 40, but they also, FCC is also looking 5 blocks each way for interference. So the C block technically would interfere with 39 through 41. And then on the uplink side, 47 through 49. So we have these 4 blocks in western Florida and 3 blocks in eastern Florida that we're turning on. The other blocks, as best we can tell, nobody's doing anything with them yet. So some people will go to hide there. We're not recommending it anymore because they all have an obligation when they bought this to use it at some time. So are the manufacturers are sure still doing rebates on gear for people coming? They are. Sennheiser, sure. So the word we're trying to get out to in your communities are for people that need to swap this is get in touch with the, I go to a small church in New Hampshire. We had 2 Shure mics. Sure enough, they were sitting at 611, I think was the band they were operating at. And there was a wireless guy in our congregation who works for a defense contractor, and when he heard me talking about it, he went right out and swapped them. That's what we want to happen. We want people to be proactive about this so they just don't wake up one day and they don't work. Any questions about this block diagram? So this is a little bit closer view of Florida. So starting on the right, we've got B and C block, and yeah, we actually do put coverage in the Gulf. And then we've got, where you see yellow, we have 3 blocks, and the dark green up north is 2 blocks. And the red, I think we have 4 blocks, but it's in a very small section of, in the Miami area, where we actually have 5 blocks, excuse me. So deployed doesn't mean we've turned it on. So we've built out all of this, but we're planning, we've got a phase end date. So the government broke up the whole repack into these phases. Everybody familiar with this? By the way, how many broadcasters, just show of hands, I forgot to ask, I usually do, are here? Wow, we do have a big wireless community here. So with the repack, the government gave all the broadcasters who didn't sell their stations an opportunity to get a new channel and be repacked. They had to go get new transmitters, new antennas, and have it all be reimbursed. And there was a schedule that they all had to be, they spread it out over basically 3 years, so they had time to do it, so the vendors had time to make all these jobs. And so phase 8 is March 13th, which is this Friday. And phase 8 is in red. So these are all the high power TV stations that I pulled out of our records. Maybe there's more. And you can see the channels that are moving. I guess I could overlay the blocks that we're hitting as well, but all these guys are moving. If they're between 38 and 50, they're moving out of what we call the mobile band. And then what I've got in blue is phase 9, which ends, I think it's, is it June 1st? June 1st, or, oh, I got it up here. No, we don't have it. Yeah, it's May, excuse me. It's the first week of May. So we've got about 8 weeks in between. and all the stations will have moved. And some aren't in the mobile band, some are like going like from channel 7 to channel 9, but they're still part of a huge link station set because they're tied in with other moves that eventually are freeing channels out of the mobile band. And stations got big incentives if they wanted to move to VHF, and some did and got paid handsomely to do it. But a lot of people use the repack to get ready for their ATSC3 signals because they were going to need circular polarized broadcast antennas, and most everybody got a new transmitter out of the deal, so it wasn't all bad. Most of the vendors I know are busier now than they've been in 10 years since the digital transmission, and lots of guys that are older than me are still working. So, you know, it's been, I think, and I can tell you from a 5G standpoint, this is going to be hugely used in the wireless community. Any questions? So I brought some literature, and it's just sort of talks about how mobile systems works. We've got one called 600 Matters and why 600 megahertz was so important. But the website, which is highly displayed, howmobileworks.com/spectrum, we have a county list, and we'll show what market it's in, what county it is, what blocks we're doing, and when commencement of operations will begin. So, for example, in Seminole County, you know, we have the C and D blocks, and I'm pretty sure we're going to be turning on signals, at least test signals, probably next week, because all these people repack on Friday. So this is a little late in the game for me to be showing up here and be talking about getting out of these bands, but please tell the world that it's happening this week. So if you go to How Mobile Works, you can see every county in the country and what blocks we have and when we're turning them on. And you can download a list and you can sign up for updates. Nationally, we've deployed 2,388 sites, and you can see what we've got planned going on. Most of the sites are ones that we already had. These antennas for 600 megahertz are gigantic. You know, the lower the frequency, the bigger the wave, the bigger the antenna is. So the tower companies are all doing really well. American Tower and Crown are now all having all these carriers come with these massive antennas to go on the same site. So that part, and all their stocks got hit with everybody else. So once you've got the guts to get back in the Wall Street pool, there's some places that are going to probably do really well for the next number of years if we just get past this coronavirus. So why are we doing this? We're using, I thought I had, yeah, this is what we call our 3-layer cake, and Neville's always talking to Wall Street about how we're building out this band. Most of you have heard we acquired Sprint. The Department of Justice finally approved it a few weeks ago. The reason from an engineering standpoint we're so excited about Sprint is their 2.5 gig band, which we call mid-band, is fabulous stuff. So we have low band, which is what I've been telling you about at 600 megahertz, and then we've got their mid-band, which in city areas and indoor wireless areas where you're reusing a lot of spectrum, which we do in our business, that's heavily used there. I used to work in the DAS business. DAS is distributed antenna systems. So where it used to be when you build out, when we all had those shoe phones, and you had a tower, and so they'd say, yeah, we got coverage. And so if there was a tower near the Dolphin Stadium, they'd say, yeah, you have coverage. That's when coverage was key. Now it's capacity. So because a cell phone now, a data call, a video call is 16x the capacity of a regular voice call. You need big time capacity, not to mention the fact that an NFL fan on average has like 1.2 devices on him, and he brings in his family. And so now, instead of relying on having, in Dallas, for example, the group I work with did the Cowboy Stadium, AT&T Stadium, there's 62 sectors. in that stadium for AT&T. It's like 62 small cells serving sections of, so everybody's got coverage and capacity. So as we use our phones more, we need more capacity, and the thing that everybody's talking about using at the very top is millimeter wave, so 24 gig, 36 gig. Now the physics of that are a site operating millimeter wave at power will probably light up like a parking lot. So it has crummy capacity, but it has crummy coverage, but gigantic capacity. And any of you know what we're going to use that capacity for? Because neither do we. It's really something. This 5G is going to be, some people are saying 15 times faster than 4G. And 4G, the killer app, the one killer app that nobody saw coming was Uber. Uber was, 4G was the first time we all had GPS in our phones. There's no Uber without having GPS in your phones. That was what made the whole thing happen. So now, the one that you hear about the most is driverless cars with oodles of sensors, and that's why you need millimeter wave. And I think that will happen, but it's not what I'm excited about. I know that's going to take forever, and I don't mind driving my car. But I do think that millimeter wave for like real-time translation we're hearing about, or Verizon had a big pitch at the Consumer Electronics Show, and they brought in publishers and surgeons, it has extremely low latency, high speed, low latency, 5G has, so you can, control brain surgery in San Francisco on a patient in New York, although I think I'd rather have the guy in the room with me. That's what they're talking about when they do that. So that's our 3-layer cake. Everybody has their own recipe and spectrum as to how they're going to do 5G. This is ours, and we are making it happen very fast. The other thing I'll add is the full 5G, let me go to the next slide. Early 5G they're calling non-standalone. So non-standalone means it still uses a lot of LTE. So the 600 that we're building on and turning on right now will immediately bolster our 4G product. If you have T-Mobile phones, it'll have much better coverage. And it's going to be used in early 5G. Full 5G, which is standalone, uses no LTE. It's all the 5G protocol. By the way, we have nothing to do with the handsets. LG, Samsung, and the big kahuna, of course, is Apple. Over 50%, it's like 53% of T-Mobile customers are on iPhones. And they don't always tell us. Matter of fact, they rarely give us a signal. We are suspecting they're going to have full standalone 5G phones for next Christmas. So I tell friends that I know who know that I'm in the business to wait. If you have a phone now, if they think to jump into something, if you want to have the chipset in there that has all the frequencies for your carrier and is full-blown 5G, I think we're a year away from it. The dual band radios, we work with Ericsson on the coast and Nokia, I think, in the middle of the country. Those are all being installed now. 5G, again, uses millimeter wave. Some of the first millimeter wave sites are going in right now. So 5G standalone, the target is a gigabit per second, which is damn fast. The delivery of in-home broadband coverage, and this was one of the things we had to promise to get the Department of Justice to approve our merger with Sprint. So in rural areas, they want us to be able to provide broadband internet. And so we have to deliver that, I think, within like 5 years. And then the speeds, what can we use the speeds for? That's still being, a lot of times the technology will precede the applications, and I think that's what's happening here. We hear lots of debate. There's a lot of cottage industries popping up about how they're going to use these speeds, but this capacity is going to be available here within the next year. Any questions about 5G? Yes?
Figure these millimeter wave antennas and like how they
They're tiny, and they'll have to be everywhere. They won't be on towers. They'll be in streetlights, and they'll need to be discreetly hidden, and yet they're fed with fiber, most of them. So it's a huge undertaking. And it'll start in the cities. Everybody's announced a handful of cities. We've announced 5 where they're going to start. I don't think any place in Florida was one of them.
What was the power again? The power on those antennas?
But we're typically from the on the millimeter wave.
Right. Yeah,
I don't know. That's a good question. I'm so focused on the macro sites with this 600 gig that I know that it's 20 watts. The other thing I'll tell you about the merger was, so Dish was a big player in us getting the merger through. They are going to be the 4th carrier. The people who opposed T-Mobile and Sprint merging felt that the consumer was going to be hurt by having only 3 competitors, Verizon, AT&T, and T-Mobile, instead of 4. And so Dish is getting in the business, and as part of it, they will be an MVNO, which is a company that basically leases their entire operation to us. They're going to operate on T-Mobile's network with their own branded coverage until they build out their own network, and I think they've got 7 years to do that. So they'll be a tenant on our network. And then there's some frequency deals. Sprint has some frequency that they're going to let Dish use, and Dish they did buy a little bit of the 800 band in the auction, and some of that is going to be transacted to make it all happen. But I think it's a really good thing. I think that it costs a fortune to build a 5G network. Sprint has not been in good financial health, which is really interesting because about 5 years ago they almost bought us. And Ledger, who is our CEO, and if any of you have ever seen him on CNBC, he's as crazy as the day is long, and he's smart like a fox. And he went very aggressively after this frequency, and the value of the company has more than doubled. And he's retiring with like a $100 million parachute. But in terms of the value he brought to the company, it was huge. He had the vision, and the value of T-Mobile is essentially double what Sprint was. So it's a good thing. It's a good thing in how we're basically merging this to go faster to get this up. That's all I really had to say. Any questions about the repack or the wireless mics, or if anybody wants to make another comment? I didn't mean this to be a sole oratory. We're thrilled you came. We hope you'll take this message out to your communities that we're turning on these blocks as early as next week. And if you're interested in any of the literature, help yourself. I can supply a copy of this presentation if anybody's interested. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much.